It's Linnell Grunman here with yet another conversation about the potential of legalizing recreational marijuana. I am delighted to have Denise Clunan with me because Denise has been an advocate for quite some time. She's the founder of Sandwich Waves of Hope and becoming quite knowledgeable. She's working very hard as an advocate in the area of substance abuse prevention, and we want to talk about marijuana. Denise, talk to us about why this is important to you and how you got involved.
So the reason I got involved was because as a parent, I didn't know what my kids were surrounded by, influenced by. I had no idea until I did a little bit of research and discovered that I was clueless and needed to know more so that I could educate them. In educating them, I actually got educated by them as well. So I learned trends. I learned what they were exposed to on social media, in the environments that they're in. And luck would have it that I learned it early enough so that my children can remain substance free.
And your children and other kids that we work with, I don't think parents, a lot of parents understand that there are a lot of kids who are really fed up with the marijuana culture that exists since we decriminalized 1 ounce. Can you talk just a little bit about that from your experience with the teens that you're involved in? And particularly now with the kids that you're involved who are in colleges.
Right. So they're very frustrated with the environment in that, you know, it does affect them even if they're not using marijuana. They are infected by fire alarms going off at all hours of the night. It's interrupting their sleep. It's interrupting their studying. Some kids are late for class because they can't get back into the room to get their books or their keys. So even though there are a great amount of kids that are not using marijuana, the ones that are affecting everybody. So to think that, you know, it's no big deal, it's my life, I'm doing it, it does affect the whole of us.
I think it's kind of interesting too, so the decriminalization of marijuana at 1 ounce still didn't cover kids under 21. But
it's actually for 18.
It's for 18,
yeah.
Right? So let's talk briefly about one element that you and I are, devoted to, and that is what happens when the perception of harm decreases. Talk about that, because we both of our kids became of age as the perception of harm decreased, and that had significant impact on their communities.
I do think that perception of harm, I mean, that even though mine are substance free, they really don't think it's a big deal for their friends until they experience what they're experiencing now.
Or the teens that we became aware of during the prom season, the really remarkable and brave teens who decided not to go to parties because they'd had enough with the drugged behavior. Right,
and there are a lot of kids that don't
go to parties anymore.
Go to parties, and they're finding ways to have fun without alcohol and marijuana. But they are also realizing that a great amount of their friends do use marijuana. So it's not as simple as to say, well, you can find safe, atmosphere to hang out and have a good time with your friends. You lose a lot of friends when they've taken the choice of marijuana. Right. If you're choosing not to.
So there's another thing that Denise and I work on all the time, which is substance abuse prevention. And I'd love to have some thoughts because we still are fighting kind of the uninformed person that understands about the developing brain. And that's, I would suspect, knowing you so well, that's an area of this topic that you really have become very knowledgeable in. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
So I had no idea about the developing brain. And I liken it to stunting your growth. Mm-hmm. Why I always wanted to be tall. I'm short. I always wanted to be tall, and something that everybody always says is, oh, don't do that, you'll stunt your growth when you were younger. Well, doing drugs is essentially stunting your brain's growth, mm-hmm. and that's how I explain it to my kids.
And of course, it's different for each child. So a child with a high IQ is one thing. A child with it's different for every child. And then you have the children who have that genetic tendency as well towards addiction.
There's many obstacles and things that the kids have to overcome. And for me, and how I talk about it with my kids is, there's no reason to put another obstacle in your mm-hmm. way by using marijuana or alcohol. It's just, if you want to have the future you want, you work towards that, not put obstacles in its way. And using drugs and marijuana is a drug.
And I have a show and tell on this subject. So from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, this is my favorite document, and it's on their website, and it's called Marijuana Use and Educational Outcomes. And every parent should read it because it really does get to the issue of the developing brain and what, not even habitual, but what occasional marijuana use can do to your child's educational outcomes, depending, of course, on the child. So let's talk about.
And when the child starts.
And
so
when
if the child starts
please talk
early,
about that. Please talk about
then
that.
they're more apt to use. Their use goes up.
Right.
You know, the younger you start using marijuana,
Right.
If you continue to use it,
Right.
by the time you're in high school, you're using it several times a week.
Right.
That's really
That's
concerning
habitual,
for me.
yeah.
It's really,
And that we see in national trends. We see that it's called early onset use. So as the perception of harm has decreased over these years where states have been legalizing or decriminalizing. Now, we have to do a disclaimer here. There's no one that works on this issue that doesn't understand that medicinal marijuana can be beneficial. Our state has it legal, so we're already there. So we're talking about, and really talking about using marijuana for self-medication on some levels. But we do see this trend now nationwide that with the decrease of perception of harm, earlier use of alcohol and marijuana, and the gateway piece, which people don't want to believe, but that actually does occur. So talking again about the impact of this on your life, you've become very passionate about the ballot question. Talk about the things. The ballot question is 23 pages long, very detailed, but what are the elements that concern you the most?
Potency. The potency of the THC, the psychoactive ingredient that makes you high, that should have been capped. If this ballot was a ballot that I could vote for, it would have had a cap. It's not a ballot I can vote for. One reason is because it's not capped. In Denmark, they consider anything over 15% a hard drug. And here, we're seeing in Colorado, legal states, Oregon, Washington, well over 95% in edibles. In the plant, the weed, the dried leaves that people smoke, it's over 20%. So potency, it also affects addiction. It
Right.
actually, they're saying, increases the chances. So it used to be that if you use marijuana as a under 25-ish, it was 1 in 6 would become addicted to marijuana. But now they're saying with the potency level that actually is not an accurate number. More
Right.
and more people are becoming addicted because of the potency. It rewires your brain. It changes all of your frontal decision making, everything, makes you more dependent. And I just really feel strongly that there should have been a THC potency cap limit. In Colorado, they have tried unsuccessfully. The parents, the healthcare professionals have tried to put a cap on it since legalization, and they have not been able to. And we talk to them all the time. They're very,
And the
very
reason
big
is the
advocates for
commission.
us.
They can't get past the advisory commission, which is made up primarily of industry people.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the edibles. So the edibles are really a critical piece of our ballot question, and we actually had a court decision that forced the ballot question to include more details about the edibles. I know that that's very important. Tell us why. For example, the other day we were talking about is tell us how these edibles get listed. Like what is a serving?
Okay, so a cookie, you know, like I could eat more than one cookie, but you're really only, the serving is a quarter of a cookie.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
who eats a quarter of a cookie?
Who eats a quarter of a cookie? Not I. I love sugary candies like, you know, gummy bears, Swedish fish. They're not going to be in the shape of a character, but there's still going to be gummies like peach rings, and you can only have one. So I know I can't have one jelly bean, one of anything, one gumball.
Plus, who reads how many is a serving? So
Right.
if kids get a hold of a bag of marijuana candy, and we have had overdoses in Colorado, there's no one going to be there saying, read how much you can have.
Right, yeah, there's definitely.
So we're producing we're allowing a product to be produced that has the potential for overdosing I would say, pretty easily.
And if you're eating the candy for intoxication purposes, you're not going to get the intoxication instantly. It takes about 30 minutes for it to metabolize in your body. So someone that doesn't know that might think, well, this isn't working. I really want to get high right now. They're going to have another one. Then they're going to have another one. So you're supposed to have one serving,
Right.
and then in 30 minutes you'll have the effects of the marijuana. But I don't know who would eat 1/4 cookie and wait 30 minutes
Right.
for that. So the edibles are a very, very big concern to me. It's also 50% of the market out in Colorado, and it's candy, it's cookies, it's soda. Who eats those things? Those
Well,
are our kids. Our kids
they're
eat
geared,
those
right.
things. So to say that there's not going to be advertising to our kids, billboards advertising marijuana, it's social norm. It will become normal for them to see that, and it will desensitize them to the effects of really what marijuana is. It's a drug. It
Right.
intoxicates you.
And so you've got a public that really doesn't understand the developing brain or what addiction really means and how it particularly is a huge risk factor for kids. So you and I have conversations about this all the time, and we're on social media a lot, and we're constantly getting that question, well, alcohol's worse. How would you respond to that?
I think that alcohol is bad, obviously.
Absolutely.
But I also think that you can't minimize marijuana by saying alcohol is worse, because it affects everybody differently, and I feel that they are equally destructive. If somebody's drug of choice is alcohol or their drug of choice is marijuana, whatever it is, if that is what they think they need, or they become dependent on it, they're equally as bad. When people say that, they're trying to normalize and accept a drug, and marijuana is a drug. And we have to keep remembering that and stop saying that it's worse or it's not as bad as. They're equally as bad, and they affect everybody differently.
And I think that we know so much more about addiction. So the real issue is addiction. Now, I know you have quite some expertise about the ballot question as it relates to local control, because you were helping out the town of Easton, your hometown. Can you talk to us about what issues came up there and how it relates to what we're facing?
So what we learned was that they are actually, it was a cultivating site. And so everybody thought cultivating they're not going to sell. That's not a store. It's not a registered marijuana dispensary, is what it's called, an RMD. But in the ballot, actually cultivating sites can sell marijuana if this ballot question passes. And the thing about that is Easton, they're compassionate people, and they believed in the reason for medicinal marijuana. But to cloud the issue with saying that, well, we have medicinal and we're going to sell recreational, that was upsetting to a lot of them, that they would have no control over that. They wouldn't be able to say they couldn't do that. They had to accept it. And then on top of that, every town has to accept no fewer than 20% of their liquor stores. So, if you have 20 liquor stores in your town, you're going to have you could have 4 marijuana stores, or pot shops that they're called in Colorado. The other thing is there's zoning right now for medicinal marijuana, but if this ballot question passes, there will not be any marijuana zoning in any town, any city or town. They'll be able to go wherever. And
I don't think people realize
commercialize
that. I really don't think they realize that. And I think that's one reason why the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce took such a strong stand on this, because, in a tourist economy, we're not seeing a good outcome in Colorado from tourism, marijuana tourism. Right. And in a tourist economy, you're concerned about where those pot shops might be. What other aspects of the ballot question are you concerned about, most concerned about?
Probably, I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely concerned about it, but I think that what needs to be exposed to everybody is not just the local control, in that you could think you're getting medicinal and end up with recreational without having to say to that and being able to stop that. The biggest thing that I want people to understand is home growing, and that you can have a home grow next to a school,
right.
next to a soccer field, a playground, next to your home. It can be outdoors as long as you can't visualize it from the street without binoculars. So I can build a 12-foot fence and grow marijuana outside in my yard. And I can grow up to 12 plants. And the worst part of that, it isn't even the home grow. It's the giving away of under an ounce of marijuana. So somebody over the age of 21 is going to be able to give away under an ounce of marijuana, but also 5 grams of concentrates. And concentrates.
People do not know about concentrates.
Yeah.
Speak to that.
So, unfortunately, we lost a fireman in New York last week to a DABS lab. That's what they're called. They're called DABS labs. And they're very, very dangerous. They use butane to make it's like they call it honey wax. It looks like honey. And or shatter. The kids call it shatter. And you can vape it. So you put it in those vape pens that we sell for people that were trying to quit smoking. Now we do see kids that are using them for vaping marijuana. And it doesn't have an odor. But, to go back to the DAB labs, you're going to be able to give away 5 grams of that. That's going to be made next door to your house. There's significant risk to that because they're using these gases.
And nothing in place to do inspections or regulatory pieces. Nothing in place and no registration for homegrown. You don't have to register that you're growing marijuana. So no way to keep track of what those operations look like or how extensive they are.
So they're saying that it's taxation and regulation, but there's just no way to do that with home growing. And in Colorado, Andrew Friedman was here last week or 2 weeks ago, and he said that was the #1 thing that was the biggest downfall.
And he's the director of
the director of the cannabis coordination. He's the director of that. And
he said the biggest problem was the homegrown.
He said that was the biggest mistake they made. Now they only have 6 plants.
Right.
We allow 12 per household.
And it's 12 plants and 12 saplings.
Yeah.
So you can.
That's another thing that I don't ever even say because I forget.
I know.
And a plant can grow to twice or every 5 months. So in a year, you're going to get matured plants twice at least, or and then another part of the year too. So I really don't think that people really understand that part of it. And
they also don't understand the impact on schools, I think, and I want to commend you because you communicated with the Massachusetts Association of School Nurses. Our friend Carolyn Raines, who sadly just left Sandwich to go to Plymouth schools, is the president of that, and talk about the impact that nurses are seeing in the Colorado schools.
Well, it is in schools, and they're saying that the numbers are down in the schools, but unfortunately, they're not showing the kids that are dropping out of school. They're not showing the suspensions of kids. And the kids are walking to school.
Or the disruption that occurs with people coming to school drugged.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's constantly, it's a distraction for these kids constantly every day.
Yeah.
But I think it was great that the nurses did come out because they are like the first line of defense for parents, and they're seeing this.
Right.
And
so the nurses in Massachusetts came out firmly against legalization.
I think I had a small conversation with her, and it was like, okay, no problem, and I don't think
because
she realized
they know what this is going to do.
It was they were right on top of it.
The burden of this is going to be in the schools and in the disadvantaged communities and in local budgets.
And the other thing is edibles, they look like regular candy. So, not saying that kids know the differences. And they could innocently be bringing a piece of candy into school, and a nurse isn't going to know. That happened a few times in our state where kids did bring something to school that they thought was candy and it wasn't. And now we have nurses that have to deal with that, and they don't know what's wrong with the child.
Right.
And their main priority is the child's well-being.
Right.
So there is a lot of obstacles to this, and I don't think that we have well planned it out.
No.
We spend 1% on prevention.
1 to 2, yeah.
We do not spend enough for our kids to know the dangers of drugs for us to be legalizing this.
Right, it's just going to add to it.
Yeah.
As a mayor said in a conversation I was having, with this drug crisis we have going on, we'd be fools to bring more drugs into the mix.
And speaking of the opioid crisis, Governor Baker and everybody that has been a part of battling the opioid crisis here in Massachusetts has really tried to get a handle on it. And I don't know when we ever will get a handle on it, but I know this: if we legalize marijuana, the efforts to deal with and conquer the opioid crisis are going to take a back seat
Yeah,
because we would
absolutely.
be busy regulating
That's true.
marijuana. And I just don't think that we're ready for that. We really, really need to help the people that need the treatment now, to make sure that our youth know that drugs are bad,
Right.
you know, where we're not spending enough before we even battle another drug.
And to look at the economic impact and the social cost and the public policy to get it so that it benefits the citizens rather than makes the situation worse. We're going to have to go, but Denise, you're awesome, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you for
Thank
having
you,
me.
everybody, for listening to another conversation. It's Linnell, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.